The movie that I chose for this movie project was The Matrix, the one made in 1999. Even though it's been out for a while, I'd never seen it before, and I thought it would be interesting to analyze the psychological issues in this movie. I'll give you some background on the movie first. Trinity is sent to recruit Neo by Morpheus. Neo is also known as Mr. Anderson because Morpheus wants him to become aware of the Matrix as he believes he is, quote unquote, the one to help people understand that the world they think they are living in is actually not real. The world that Trinity and Morpheus live in is actually the real world, but Agent Smith knows their plan and will do anything to stop them. The subdisciplines in psychology that are relevant to the matrix include consciousness and perception. Consciousness is relevant because it is defined as a combination of a person's subjective experience of the external world and the person's internal mental activity resulting in brain activity. Throughout the movie, Neo is in and out of consciousness because he is constantly plugged up to enter the matrix. However, it could be argued that even though Neo is sleeping while he is in the Matrix, he can very well have a level of consciousness in and out of the Matrix since he has a perceptual experience of his surrounding. Perception is also relevant in the Matrix. Perception is a processing, organization, and interpretation of sensory signals in the brain, which results in an internal neural representation of the physical stimulus. Even though Neo's body never physically enters the matrix, he still is able to process his visible surroundings, eventually organizing and processing them, which points to his perception always being intact. One psychological theory that is present in this movie is the activation synthesis theory, which states that neurons in the brain fire randomly during sleep, which activates sensory inputs for smell, sound, and sights, and the brain's attempt to make sense of this results in a dream. This is exactly what Neo was experiencing, multiple dreams that were slowly guiding him to the existence of the Matrix before Morpheus tried to recruit him. He just had a hard time putting into words what he specifically dreamt about, which is what happens to us at times where we know we had a dream, but we struggle to perfectly describe that dream. Now we can analyze some psychological issues some of the characters experienced. Starting with the main character, Neo, it is fair to assume that Neo has generalized anxiety disorder. People with this disorder feel a constant discomfort and anxiety, but is not associated with a specific thing. It is evident that when Neo is worried about his surroundings in his sleep or when he is awake, he knows that his anxiety is present, but at the time he does not know it is because of the Matrix. This situation explains why his sleeping patterns are unorganized, which is a common attribute of having generalized anxiety disorder. It should be noted that his anxiety improves as the movie progresses because he begins to accept that he is the chosen one. One unique aspect of this movie is that there is one psychological issue that everyone experienced except for Agent Smith. Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity all had agoraphobia, which is an anxiety disorder of being in situations from which escape is difficult or impossible. They have this fear because every time they enter the Matrix, they know there is a risk they may never escape the Matrix, because if you are captured by the agents, you cannot make it to the real world through an exit. If they are killed while in the Matrix, their mind dies in real life, thus killing them completely. They always enter with fear without knowing if they can escape, despite portraying characteristics of being fearless. Shifting our focus from Neo, Morpheus, and Trinity, it is important to acknowledge that Agent Smith, the antagonist, has some psychological issues of his own. There is a possibility that he had bipolar 1 disorder. Evidence in the movie that supports this is that when Neo is in the Matrix as a regular citizen, he is arrested and taken into questioning by Agent Smith. Agent Smith is polite and reasonable with Neo in hopes of convincing Neo to help the agents. However, Neo gives him the middle finger, so Agent Smith's mood changes completely to a manic episode and begins to torture Neo by closing his mouth with his mind by turning it into a flesh-constricted mouth. My overall reaction on the movie was that it was exceptionally portrayed, especially when you take a science fiction movie and tie it in with accurately represented psychological issues like The Matrix did. Also, there was only one psychological theory that was discussed, and that was the activation synthesis theory. Even though the characters were never really in the Matrix, only their mind was, their body was still hooked up to the Matrix. It was well represented that they could feel vivid surroundings while they were there, which really gave accurate representation to that theory. Even though the characters had many issues, such as Agent Smith, Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus, like disorders such as bipolar 1 disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, agoraphobia. And this is what gave The Matrix a unique and intriguing look. And my sources that I used for this project include the Psychology in Your Life textbook, the third edition, as well as acquiring some images from Google.com.